I think the
Yeah.
first thing is we need to normalize infertility. I think when things aren't normalized, they create boxes and silos and label people. So I think the word infertility in itself has so many negative connotations. And
Mm.
when we look at infertility, it's actually 1 in 6 couples around the world struggle with infertility.
What's up, y'all? This is Nina Perez, and this is Straight Talk, no sugar added. And you know that I love you guys so much. You guys are freaking killing it. I can't believe I'm almost at 100,000 downloads, and I cannot thank you enough for all of that because you guys are so showing up. I love Straight Talkers. I love who you guys are, and I love that you show up, not just for me, but the guests that I bring on here. Now, the people that I bring on are the best humans on the planet, and they come on here to grow, challenge, and transform your thinking. And I am so thrilled to welcome Stephen and Charlene. I hope I said their names right. I'm right, right, guys? All right,
Yes.
just making sure. Just making sure. They're transformative coaches and the authors of Rewrite Your Life Story. Now, their journey is marked by resilience and healing from infertility and has deeply informed them in their coaching, emphasizing the power of the human spirit to transform. Now, for over 13 years, they have empowered individuals to break free from limitations using their unique blend of mind, body, and spirit insights. And their approach is both compassionate and holistic. Now, helping people rewrite their stories, guys, like, come on. Okay. These are seasoned speakers and educators, and they excel in making complex concepts accessible and actionable. So, I know that you guys are ready to dig in. So let's do this. Let's join these amazing humans. Thank you so much for being here on Straight Talk. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Nina. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Nina. We're just over the moon to be on your show.
I am so excited. Guys, for those of you who are listening, it is like 7 a.m. for them right now. It is like 2 in the afternoon for me. I'm like wired and all excited, and they're like bright and waking up. I'm like, listen, if I can crawl out of bed sometimes at 7, it's a good day. So tell me a little bit about you guys. So, I want to take our beautiful audience on a journey of who you are. I wanted to get to know you. So tell us who you are. Whoever wants to go first, I'd love to hear it.
You can go first, Sharlene.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So Nina, we're Stephen and Charlene. We've known each other since we were 14 years old, like since we were in like before just during high school days, really. And just hit it off straight away, like really great friends. And life's just taken us on such an amazing journey, like getting to know each other and then going through, like after getting married, just going through so many different hurdles and managing them together. It's just been like an amazing journey of discovery, really.
Yeah, I would note that. Actually, Nina, tomorrow is our 23rd wedding anniversary.
Oh, so cool. Happy
we've been married.
anniversary.
Thank you. So we've been married for 23 years, but as Sharlene said, we've known each other for over 30 years. So we basically grew up together, and we decided to get married young. Few reasons. We knew that we were meant to be together, but two, Charlene's father was going through some health challenges at the time, and one of his dreams was to walk his only child down the aisle. So we got married. I was 21. Sharlene was 22, 23 when we got married. Yeah. And soon after, we decided we were going to have a family. And we were trying, and we just wanted to be young parents. Do you know what I mean? Like we wanted to have energy. We wanted to be young parents. And, we, after 2 years of trying, we went, said, oh, something's wrong here, and went through testing. And that's basically when I found out that I couldn't have children. So that was a huge challenge to us as a couple. However, I will say Sharlene never judged me through the process. I remember when I found out I couldn't have children, at that time, Charlene's father had already passed away. And I remember saying to Sharlene, do you know what I mean? I know this is your dream to be a mother, and I release you from this marriage. If that is something that you really want, we're still young, you're still in your 20s, and I totally get that. And Charlene said to me that day, Stephen, I married you for who you are, not for what you could give me.
Mm-hmm.
And that has
Wow.
definitely been the foundation of our marriage. Charlene never judged me. However, I judged myself.
Yeah.
So, as you can imagine, it attacks every form of the male, your masculinity, who you are, things like that. And when we went through testing, there was no way that I could have children. So, we just sat on that for about 4 or 5 years. And then, at the time, our belief systems were quite narrow and limited. And, we belonged to certain groups of thinking that, if it was God's will, he would do that. And then again, that formed a lot of judgment as well, and a lot of condemnation. But one thing I say is, for me, it was more the guilt, that unconscious guilt that affected everything.
Yeah, and I think for me, I found it like rather difficult because I'm trying to be there to support him and to go through all this, because I could only imagine like what it would be like if it's the shoe was on the other hand, and for him to feel that way, like I always just think, oh come on, I'm just foreign my belief in you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just managed through that. Like Stephen's been so supportive, like while we're going through trials, like trying to do the processes of IVF, all those like different techniques that we had to go through, all the injections and everything, and all the processes. He's been there with me the whole way. And I know he says that, he feels guilty, but a lot of people use that guilt as an excuse not to be there for their partners, and they shut down. But Stephen's been for me all the way.
Yeah.
Wow, that's actually really powerful. And I'm wondering, and what I want to ask is, how did you get through it though? Because it is true. Love, transcends all of these things, but we're still human, right? And so, I'm sure that Stephen, you had to go through, transcending that guilt, maybe anger, the frustration, the condemnation that you talked about, the judgment, right? But also you, Charlene, like in those quiet moments when you see, I'm not going to be a mother to Stephen's children right now. How do I feel about that? Right? These are real things, and people really go through what you're going through, right? And there's no judgment in that, but it is real. I mean, this is real, right? And society sometimes plays that part. Like, yeah, so Stephen, you can't have children. It does attack your masculinity in your own mind. I don't know if everybody cares about that, but in your own being, I'm sure it does. And the same thing if the shoe was on the other foot. Women feel that way too,
Yeah,
So I'm just wondering how you guys allowed yourself to grow through that, right? While still maintaining the marriage, the love, the respect, because I have spoken to marriages who have broken apart over this.
absolutely.
So I want to strengthen the people who are listening, who may be going through something similar and are trying to actually navigate what that means now in their marriage, right? In going forward. So I would love you to speak to that. Like how did you guys navigate that and respect each other for feeling what you're feeling? Does that question make sense?
Absolutely. I think the first thing is we need to normalize infertility. I think when things aren't normalized, they create boxes and silos and label people. So I think the word infertility in itself has so many negative connotations. And when we look at infertility, it's actually 1 in 6 couples around the world struggle with infertility. So it's more common than people actually think.
Yeah.
And the thing is though, like even though we like we're embraced with that information, people still going through that situation sometimes have their blinkers on, and they feel like, oh my gosh, I'm the only person in this world that's going through this. And it's not like a conscious thing that they're going to think that way, but it's just like inwardly they're thinking, oh my gosh, who can I talk to? Like there's a lot of shame around that. Like, who do I talk to? My friends, my family? They won't understand. But it's surprising how many people do understand.
Yeah, that's true. And I think for Charlene and I, we started referring to infertility as childless by nature. So there's a lot of people that are childless by nature or childless by choice. And whether it's by nature or by choice, the outcome is the same. You are childless. So infertility, I guess, again, it has this negative in connotation, and it's quite hurtful, and it's quite it just labels people.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so what happened with us is we ended up choosing the route of a donor. So we started going searching for donors, and obviously we
Mind you,
have.
that took me a process as well to get my head around that as well. Thinking, oh, do I really
I'm
want to go
sure.
someone else? Because I married this guy, so I want him,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
be.
Yeah.
But then I had to get my head around the process. Okay, it doesn't matter because he's still going to be there. Like he's still going to be the person raising that child with me. So that's helped me to think, okay, that's all right.
and the
Mhm.
questions that were going through my mind was, will this child respect me as their father?
Mhm.
And then that comes into play, the concept of nurture or biological father. So what is that real connection? Is it,
Yeah.
parent by
Nature.
nurture or parent by genetics? So we, through our research, found out that nurture is more important than genetics at times, because you see some people have really close relationships through
Yeah.
nurture rather than
Yeah. I
genetics.
was
So
gonna say, don't you have those crazy family members you wish were
yeah,
family?
yeah, absolutely.
I do.
Yeah, we sure do. Um, and so that played a big role. So as I said, it was a 5-year process before we actually jumped into IVF after finding out. So it wasn't a decision we took lightly. We also researched adoption. Australian laws around adoption are very difficult. And though I know this sounds totally selfish, all adoptions in Australia are open. And I just felt that had too many. For me, I felt that was unfair to the child. It would create too many internal conflicts. It would create too much confusion. And I didn't believe that I could handle that attachment. So that was totally selfish on me, but I knew what was best for us at the time.
So do you
We
mean
ended up,
open? I'm sorry, I just want to back up for a second. Do you mean
Mhm.
open like you would adopt it, but the parent can come back, or that they could still have a role in the child's life? What does open mean?
yeah, open
Contact.
adoption means
Yeah.
they can still have contact with the child, even though you're
Oh,
the
yeah, no,
adopted
that's
parents.
very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, and
I
then we
understand.
don't have many agreements with overseas adoption in Australia. So it's very closed shop in
Very
Australia.
limited. Yeah.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
limited your options. So that's when we decided to go through a donor, and we ended up doing 18 cycles. And we did fall pregnant, but we ended up in miscarriages.
Mhm.
So on top of that, you've got the anxiety of choosing donors, you've got the anxiety of falling pregnant, you've got anxiety over the cycles, and
Yeah.
then the miscarriage. Again, that guilt was impacted, but not only was
Yeah.
the guilt impact, you're then grieving again. So
Yeah.
each cycle brings emotions of grief and guilt. And I think for Charlene, and we are getting back to how we healed, the last straw. Do you want to speak about the last straw
Yeah,
for you?
absolutely. For me, I found like the last straw that made me decide, okay, enough is enough, was when the final round of egg retrieval, I discovered that it wasn't viable, so they couldn't even get to transplant stage. So like, yeah, that's it for me. Like I've had enough. I've gone through the
Yeah.
whole, ups and downs, a roller coaster of emotions, and for this to not even get to the point of being able to be transferred, it's like that's it for me.
Yeah,
Like,
and they retrieved 8 eggs that time, and
yeah,
none of them were
and like, are
viable.
you serious?
Yeah.
Right. And
So
and then on top of the emotional roller coaster, which this is really hard already, but then
yeah,
all of the shots and medications and doctor's appointments and churning your life around, like it's a lot. I have a friend of mine who's going through IVF, and it's a lot. I mean, just even the process before even harvesting the eggs or anything, the process alone is very taxing on a human. Right. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I can imagine that you were just like, I'm done. Like, get
yeah,
out of my face. I'm out of here. Right? Yeah, because you've done it a lot, right? I mean, that's a lot of rounds to go through and a
yeah,
lot of emotions for both of you. I
yeah,
mean, I'm
yeah,
glad that you guys thought of, yes, you know what? Nurture is going to be is also a good option because it is. Because it
Mm.
is. But you can do that with the humans in your life. You can do
Mm.
that with what you're doing now, pivoting into coaching people and helping people through all of this. Do you know the impact you leave on them too? That's also a legacy, right? And I
Yeah.
think we downplay those things too much, and we shouldn't. I've
Yeah.
had people that I didn't even know I affected their life in a great way from like middle school that still tell me
Mm.
that a conversation I had to them in middle school helped them in their life. I'm like, what?
Yeah, wow.
Right? So it's
Yeah.
just to show you the impact that you can have on people's lives. I love what you're doing right now,
Thank you.
telling
Thank you.
people to look at this in a different way. I love
Mm.
that you're on my show. I love that we're talking about something so real. And I
Mm.
wish more people talked about it this
Yeah.
way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And,
love
and
that you know, the way you're viewing it too, that it is by nature and we are okay with that, right? It's a
Yeah.
journey. It's a
Yeah.
yeah,
journey. Very
yeah.
powerful. Very
Thank
powerful.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
You know, and it was at that stage that we actually we were coaching at the time. We were, you know, running neuro-linguistic programming practitioner and master practitioner courses. Sharlene was running
you. Mhm.
meditation certifications for instructors, and that was sort of like not a breaking point, but we knew we had to retreat in our cave and we needed to, can I say block the world out, but not really block the world
Yeah,
out.
just retreat back into our
Yeah.
cave for a
Yeah,
little while and just two of us, just sorting things out and thinking, okay, what's going on here? Just give ourselves time just to grieve and just to work things
Mhm.
out together.
Mhm.
that
I
retreat
love
ended
that.
up being 5 years.
That's
um,
beautiful. No, that is really, really beautiful to respect yourselves enough to do that, because I think
yeah,
what happens to a lot of people who are entrepreneurs or leaders or stuff, we don't give ourselves enough time, and we think that a weekend is going to do it, and it doesn't, and then we're running and hitting walls and we're wondering why we're not productive. But to give yourself a time to heal is huge, and most people don't do that. And this is not a little thing either, right? This is actually coming to terms with, we will not have children. Like, let's face
right.
this. Let's do this together. Let's understand this, right? It's not like something small, like a business decision, right? This is a huge thing. So I can imagine taking 5 years. I mean, I'm sure that it took that long to kind of wrestle with things at first and just love on each other again and be back to where you were, when you got married and loved each other so much. You know what I mean? Like that, because a lot of
Yeah.
stuff comes into play. Let's be real. Marriage is hard, right?
Yeah,
And so you have to like also navigate that. How's my partner feeling? And respecting what my partner feels, at the same time respecting me. So that's huge. So it took you 5 years, Stephen, to get it together.
it took
Okay.
us 5 years to get it together, and I think the main thing was so much time and energy had been put into this one thing. Like, we're talking 18
Yeah.
cycles. We're
Right.
talking, like, before we got married, we used to
Mm.
always have, we're going to have 4 children. We had names for the children. So we're talking about something that we had created in our mind that was going to be our
Yeah,
reality.
Right.
our whole identity
Wow.
as a couple was built around us having a certain number of children, having their names, how are we going to raise them? Like,
Right.
this whole process in our mind is how we were as people, like as a couple. This is us. We're going to be parents, and every time we'd had that little glimmer of hope through IVF, it's like, yeah, this is it, and then for it to not go through, it's like, yeah, okay, another
Yeah.
setback. And just, I think one of the things is that going through, when you go to different events and you see all these Mother's Day, Father's Day things,
That was
that's probably
hard.
the hardest thing for us as well,
Mhm,
because
mhm.
we had to learn to respect each other and think, okay, well, all right, I might want to go to this, but you don't want to go. So let's just sit this one out together and find something else that we can do together.
Yeah.
Right, right. What can I ask you guys, if you don't mind sharing, what those 5 years look like to you? Like, what was that retreat? What did that mean? How did you
Yeah.
navigate that?
Yeah. I guess for me it was, I guess, again, the guilt played a big part, because when Charlene said, that's enough, my body can't handle it anymore. And it got to the point where, and I don't, it got to the point where Charlene, during her monthly cycles and things like that, would just faint because of all the hormones.
Yeah.
So it got to a point where it was playing a big part on her body. And Charlene had to go through a process of getting her body back to normal as well. Because, you know, we would be at work and all of a sudden she would just faint. And people would come run down and get me and say, Charlene's on the floor. We don't know what's happened. And it was because she was bleeding so heavily that the body would just faint. So there was a big, you know, healing process in her body. For me, the finality meant that this is final and I've done this to her. You know, so every time she would faint or something like that, it would again play with my mind. This is my fault. So the blame was very strong. The process of healing was, one, acceptance that now we are no longer child by nature, we are childless by choice. When we were able to make that transition and realize, you know, we need to actually rewrite our life story now. We need to rewrite our story and rewrite who we're going to be, because we didn't know what our purpose was anymore. We didn't know, like, even though we had been coaching and mentoring for many years and teaching for many years, our purpose, that was great at the time because we've always been in personal development. And I will say, if it wasn't for the programs and the personal development, I think this would have played out a lot differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, because we as a couple always attended courses, always read books, always did something to improve ourselves. So I think if we didn't have those tools and resources, we wouldn't probably be here today. You know, and that's the truth. And so once we realize, hey, we're going to be childless by choice now, not childless by nature, can I tell you, just that one reframe set us free.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Right, because that's a whole different ball game. You went from victim to victor, right? You went from this is the victim of my circumstances to this is the choice of my circumstance, and I'm happy with it. You know, I spoke to a couple recently who was also childless by choice. They both can have children, but they're both childless by choice. And at first, it kind of takes you aback, like, but you can have children. You know what I mean? But they don't want to have children, and they've both decided that in the early stages of their marriage, 17 years in, they're both very happy they made that decision. Right. And so you're right. There is a shift in the brain. And I'm hope that somebody who's listening right now, that this can really touch them in that way where they can realize you don't have to be a victim. And in fact, I highly recommend that you don't stay a victim, right? Like, you just have to look at the situation for what it is and then make a decision. Right. And so I'm glad you guys did that. Was that a mutual thing? Or Stephen, were you struggling a little bit when Sharlene looked at you and said, I can't do this anymore? Or how did that play out?
Yeah, sure. For me, when Charlene said that, I totally respected her because I knew that the toll that it was paying on her body. And I always took the position that whatever her choice is, I'm going to be there because she didn't judge me.
Right.
So, and I think for Charlene, it is harder because Charlene is an only child, one, and Charlene has no family in Australia. So, well, she has family in Australia, but they're the other side of Australia. So she has no immediately family in Sydney. Whereas me, I come from a really big Italian family.
And my dad also coming from like a family of 11 kids. So there was always my dream growing up to have a bunch of kids, you know what I mean? If I could.
Yeah. So, and I have, you know, my brother has children and for me, it was like, okay, I can't do this. You know, hopefully, you know, I've got family. I need to be grateful in with what I am. But Charlene has never said that's your family, which is really good. Her family is my family is her family.
Of course.
So I guess, yeah. So I guess for me, it was respecting her where she was and also knowing that this wasn't about me. Even though it was about us, it wasn't about me. So I needed to, one, be present for Charlene. And at that time, being present, it was really interesting actually, because when she was low, I was okay. When I was low, she was okay. So there was a balancing between each other. And Charlene, you know, me being a coach, but Charlene also being a counselor, she had a lot of more tools than I had at her disposal. And so I think the tools that you had played a bigger part in your healing as well.
Absolutely. I think for me as well, excuse me, giving me away on me. Having had like a lot of the personal development throughout the years before, like one of the things I really picked up from one of our modalities, which is the NLP, is the respect for other people's model of the world. And the idea that everyone has their own concept of what the world looks like and their story of what it means to them. So just because someone has a different idea from me doesn't mean that they're necessarily wrong or right. It's just their model of the world. And for me to have respect for that model of the world helps me to be in a position of having empathy and respecting that, okay, you know, I might not feel that way, but that's okay. You know, I have a different model of the world, you have a different model of the world, and we all have different models of the world. But it's what it is to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, but that's respectful. I'm an NLP master practitioner as well, and I realize that you know, sometimes our emotions when it comes to like our family or like anybody immediate, we forget that we have these tools to our disposal. You know, because then our humanity comes in and we just start to wrestle with that. But when you can kind of push back for a second and just say, hold on a second. They do have a different map on how they got here, a different journey on how they got here, right? And I think it's just beautiful that both of you can respect each other in that way. And that is a testament to a very strong marriage, right? Because I think one of the things in marriages that our struggle is when we're trying to convert the other person to be what we want them to be or to be exactly like us, right? If we wanted to be married to us, we should have just stayed alone, right? But this is what we do. We try to make other people be like what we want. And it's a big testament to that. Like you know, I respect you guys for doing that. I respect you for showing people that model on how to do that, even through the tough times. And you know, marriage is something that to me is very sacred. You know, I've been married 27 years. And, you know, with my husband, it's the same way. I'm like, you know, I know you view it that way, and I cannot blame you for how you view something that's different than how I view it. And I think personal development, to your point, has been what saved our marriage, you know, because I realized I don't have to make him into my ideal of what I think he should be. So now, how are you taking all of that beautiful journey and information, right? Because it is beautiful when you can learn and grow and expand and impact the world, right? So how are you taking that now and applying it to what you do today? Who do you work with? Couples? Do you work with clients? What do you do today?
Yeah, great question. I guess one of the healing processes for us was reevaluating what our past was and taking the sting out of it and realizing that our past actually has made us who we are.
Exactly.
And we wouldn't change a thing. Like, yes, it was grueling at the time, but we wouldn't change a thing. And I guess then we discovered, well, that's us. We wouldn't change a thing. We're happy for what we went through. Even though it was hard in the moment, it's shaped us who we are now. It's defined our marriage. It's defined our relationship. How many other stories that are not about IVF, that are about just life in general, have people been able to rewrite their narrative? And so this thing started brewing in us. Well, let's start interviewing people and finding out. And then at the birth of the podcast, Rewrite Your Life Story, where we just interview people like yourself that have had some tragedy and have risen from that tragedy and rewritten their life story and wouldn't change the tragedy because it's who has defined them.
Right.
And can I tell you, Nina, the most growth I've had is in interviewing people. Charlene and I were just driving the other day, and I'm like, I am so grateful for the life we've got right now, because I realize that we're helping people. I realize that our story has defined us, but I've met such amazing people along the journey. And so what we do now is we help people that are stuck in their story to re-look at that story as a third-party person.
That's good.
And glean the learnings So when we're stuck in victim, it means we haven't learned from that situation.
Yeah. Yes. So good. So good. So good.
Yeah,
Right. Because if you looked at the situation, and I talk about this all the time, so I love what you just said. And I try to encourage people in this all the time, because if you are repeating the story over and over and over again, you have not gotten the lesson. So get the
correct.
freaking lesson so that you can move forward. That's why when I go through something in my life that it's like a repetitive thing, I stop and I say, okay, all right. But see, I believe in God, right? So I'm like, all right, God, what's the lesson? Because girlfriend needs to move on. I am sick of this lesson, right?
Yeah.
I love that you help people with that.
Yeah.
Now, do you do it as individuals, as couples? Like, how do you work that?
It really depends on the person and the situation. Definitely when it comes to like if we're dealing with a couple,
Yeah.
Charlene will sit with the wife, I'll sit with the husband. You know, we'll have separate sessions and we'll have combined sessions,
Oh, nice.
because
Okay.
we totally respect that there are times that you can't be your true self when your
Yeah.
partner is there
Yeah.
in fear of judgment. And I guess we need to make sure that judgment does not play a part in our relationship and our model of the world,
Or blame.
That's right.
or
That's
blame.
right.
So by allowing that person to be their true authentic self outside of that situation, glean the learnings, we find that in time the couple comes together with mutual respect for each other and no
Yeah.
judgment. I
That's so
think
good.
for us, you know, I also have an autoimmune condition, and I speak into that autoimmune condition. And what I had to learn is not to judge my symptoms and not to call it a good day or a bad day,
Mm.
because that was defining who I was as well. And it's really
Mhm.
interesting. This autoimmune was only triggered during the IVF process at the last cycle. So my body
Oh,
gave me
wow.
some interesting feedback.
Feedback. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it wasn't until I realized, hang on, this is feedback from what I went through and what we've been through, that now I'm able to navigate. Again, I had to stop judging the symptoms.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So good.
for me, like it was, even though Stephen would say, like I feel sad, but like because he can't go out and do things like we used to do because of when I'm in a bad day. I said, well, it just is what it is. Like we just need to get you through this so that we when you are good, when you're feeling okay, we can do something together. But right now, like if you're not feeling great, we just need to be where we need to be.
And I think
Mm.
Charlene has, and I want if Charlene can speak into this, because
Mhm.
she's taught me one of the greatest lessons as a counselor. Because I said one day, I was like, what if someone's talking to you and their values are totally conflict with what you do, like your values, and you as a counselor listening to the story. And Charlene taught me the lesson of suspending judgment. And that has been a key to my healing.
Yeah, because we all let's face it, we're all humans. It's just natural for us just to sometimes
Yeah.
judge.
Yeah.
It just comes as a snap thing. Like it's not a conscious decision. And if it is, sometimes there's something going on in the background there. But the fact is that we think, well, how do we not judge? When someone's so different from us, what we can do is basically suspend that judgment, just putting it to one side for a moment and taking on like, okay, what would it be like if I was in that situation right now?
Right.
Like, how would
Right.
I feel if I was in that situation? And not putting it on that person, but just taking a different viewpoint, thinking, okay, well, this person's got a different story in life. And it doesn't have to be my story, but it's their story. And I have a different story from them, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't be judged myself. So how would it feel if I was to be judged for what I do, So
Right.
just putting it to one side for a moment, just to have an attitude of curiosity, not
Yeah.
nosiness, but curiosity.
No, that's so good. And it's true, because I think that we also have to realize that we're all judgeable. Like we all have things where we can be
Yeah.
judged.
Yeah.
And so suspending judgment is huge. And I think how much of a better world it would be if we all did that, kind of just suspended judgment at first and listened to somebody's story. I realize there's way more connection in us and through us when we don't judge, right? So I
Yeah.
was talking on one of my lives recently about, I don't know, somebody was having a talk about, whether you're Democrat or Republican or left or right or whatever that was. And I started saying, well, my neighbor, I don't know who she is personally, but I've been trying to serve her because she's dying of cancer. And not one time did I think about whether she was a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. I said, we
Yeah.
need to really stop this nonsense. It's just nonsense,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, if we're in the street dying or something's wrong, I'm not going to ask you, hold on, before you touch me. Are you black or white or Asian? Are you a
Yeah.
Democrat? Are you Republican? Are you, it's just ridiculous. And I love that, Charlene, like just suspending judgment and even on ourselves. Like stop judging yourself for a second and just realize this is what it is. What can I do to reframe and rethink this, as opposed to constantly judging that same behavior over and over again, which, by the way, keeps you stuck. It just keeps you
Yeah.
stuck, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's
And
it's
it
like a
leaves absolutely no
self-sabotage. Yeah,
room. Yeah. It leaves no
exactly.
room for love. There's
Right, right.
that Mother Teresa herself even said that we cannot possibly love someone if we're too busy judging them.
Yeah, so good. So good. You guys are so loving. I just love you guys. I love your energy. I love the way you love and respect each other. I love your story. I just love every freaking thing about you. So I'm going to definitely go and make sure I subscribe to your podcast. And but before I let you go, though, I do want my audience to know how they can reach out to you, because your energy, your aura, like all of that is amazing. And I'm sure that, somebody who's listening is either going through or needs something to help them transform and shift their mind. And so before I let you go, though, I do need all of that. Like, how do people reach you? How do they talk to you? Where do they listen to you? All that stuff.
Yeah, great. So I guess the first place is our website is www.rewriteyourlifestory.com.au, and you can search us on any podcast platform that you're on, and it's Rewrite Your Life Story. And also from our website, all our social handles are there, so you can just DM us straight
Awesome.
away.
Oh my God, I love it. I love it. Any last words to inspire somebody who may be going through this in their life?
Yeah, I guess healing happens in community. And
Oh,
had
I
we
love that.
embraced a community, we probably wouldn't have taken 5 years to heal. But
Mm,
we felt judged. We had the story in our mind that our community was going to judge us, not
wow.
realizing that healing occurred in community.
But don't be afraid as well to find a new community. If you feel that you're stuck in a community that is not supportive of you, find other people. There's a whole wide world out there of people that are
Yeah,
going through different situations that are willing just to be there to support you.
Yeah. And if you
so
can't
good.
find one, just reach out to us.
Yeah.
We'll be your community.
Yeah.
We'll support you. We'll be your cheerleaders.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I was talking to someone who was struggling with her community. It's funny enough that you mentioned that. And we were talking about how she doesn't know how to move forward. And honestly, sometimes we're just loyal to a fault. Right. So we're more loyal to the community or the person that maybe are serving other people, but that are not serving you. And sometimes you just have to be loyal to you. When you're not in a community that's not helping you, enriching you, pushing you forward, supporting you. And when you're there, you have to ask yourself, am I loyal to a fault here? So thank you guys for showing up today. Thank you for pouring into my community. I cannot tell you how much I love this conversation, how present I was for this. I really appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thanks, Nina.
I love it. Guys, I told you you would love these amazing humans. I know what I'm talking about. Please make sure that you follow them. I will link all of their information below. Uh, you know, just like Charlene just said, if you are in a community where you're just not feeling that support, you're a little bit afraid to talk, or you're being judged or any of that, find yourself a new community. And what better way to start than with someone who is telling you that they are not judging you, that they want to be there to support and honor you as well. So please make sure that you reach out to them. Don't stay stuck in your mess. You don't have to. You're not alone. You don't have to do this alone. This is why people like Stephen and Charlene show up, because they are trying to say to you, you're not alone on this journey. We got you. We've been here. We've done the work. And now I want you to go ahead and do what it is you have to do for you. So thank you guys for being here. I love you so much. This is Nina Perez, straight talk, no sugar added. Until next time.